Hello, my name is Novković, and today I'll be presenting a systematization of knowledge paper which dealt with the topic of secure memory allocation. This was joint work with Professor Marin Golub. So to quickly outline the course of this talk, first off I will give an introduction and a brief background of memory allocation vulnerabilities and memory allocation in general, and then I will move on to an overview of secure heap memory allocation in general. And last but not least, I will present the results of our performance analysis and benchmarking. So, as we are all painfully aware, memory corruption vulnerabilities have endured through several decades worth of security research and continue to pose a significant threat to system security. Modern memory corruption exploitation has recently shifted its focus to abuse of temporal memory safety violations, often as a part of larger exploit chains. These exploits have been steadily increasing throughout the years, especially in security critical programs such as operating system kernels and web browsers. It should be noted that heap safety is a well-known problem, which was studied and tackled throughout the computing environment, ranging from capability-enhanced hardware instruction architectures such as Cherry, to safe languages which enforce memory safety constraints in compile time, such as Rust. However, these techniques are usually not available or not feasible for a wide array of legacy and modern applications written in C or C++, thus leaving us with only one option, which is to increase the safety of heap memory allocation systems. These systems are an often overlooked part of a program's runtime. Security-wise, they can be designed to greatly enhance the safety of memory allocation in the heap in general. However, at the same time, some core design features facilitate or straight up enable exploitation of certain classes of heap-related vulnerabilities. The previously mentioned shift to heap-based heap-based exploitation rekindled interest in this research interest in this area, and a recent string of papers published on secure memory allocation papers prompted us to systematize and evaluate this fairly niche but complex area. As a part of this paper, we analyzed conventional memory allocation systems from a security perspective. We then provided a systematic analysis of all existing secure memory allocation systems and techniques, along with a detailed performance analysis of some state-of-the-art systems, which designed to give insight into the design of these systems and the design of these techniques in general. So, to get a brief overview, we analyzed publicly available vulnerability data provided by the Dimitri Corporation, and we observed that throughout the last couple of years, the number of heap-related vulnerabilities registered in the wild has been steadily increasing. This steady increase can be attributed to a widespread use of active vulnerability discovery techniques and also an increased number of mitigations for other attack vectors. The majority of these vulnerabilities stem from human errors in languages without explicit memory safety mechanisms such as C and C++. However, before we take a look at the cause of these vulnerabilities, we have to have a brief recap of conventional memory allocation. So the first and foremost goal of every allocation system is to partition the free space and serve memory chunk requests of given sizes in a timely manner. So these systems can be classified by several criteria, but are usually classified based on the technique they use to partition free space and the techniques they use to manage active chunk state or active chunk metadata. Partitioning techniques usually split free regions into fixed size chunks or dynamically join and split neighboring chunks depending on their state, as depicted on this figure. Metadata management usually uses free lists or bitmaps to track states of active chunks, and most importantly, metadata placement is one specific design feature and very important one which will be touched upon later in greater detail. So, as I said, these systems are usually rated by several more criteria, such as minimizing fragmentation and multi-threaded scalability. However, the most important criterion here is performance, due to the fact that these systems are frequently invoked during runtime. Due to this, core design features in most conventional allocation systems have remained unchanged throughout the years, in spite of radically different and changing security requirements. So this brings us to heap-related vulnerabilities in general. These can be split into two main categories: programmer-induced memory mismanagement vulnerabilities and vulnerabilities present in the memory management system, memory allocation system itself. So programmer-induced heap vulnerabilities consist of memory safety violations, and especially temporal memory safety violations. Overflows and overreads can be used to corrupt or leak neighboring chunks inside the heap, which can lead to misbehaviors and serious security violations. Temporal safety vulnerabilities, however, manifest themselves in the form of the use after free vulnerability, depicted on this figure, which leverages the use of pointers to previously freed blocks or previously freed heap objects to hijack a program's execution flow. So, as I mentioned earlier, memory allocation systems can be detrimental to overall heap safety. So first off, conventional memory allocation systems usually place metadata adjacent to user-controlled chunks, which can in order to boost performance. However, this enables an attacker to abuse heap overflows, to corrupt internal allocator metadata, and possibly hijack a program's control flow. Moreover, deterministic chunk reuse enables a reliable exploitation of temporal memory safety violations. So the first important and most important step in evaluating these systems is to form an appropriate threat model. And the most important question here is, how are these vulnerabilities usually exploited? So attackers can freely interact with a vulnerable program through a domain-specific channel. This means that for internet-facing applications, these are usually exploited through network requests, through command line arguments, and so on. However, this also means that attackers can invoke an arbitrary amount of malloc and free calls, and this is especially common in the most common exploitation scenario, web browser exploitation, where an attacker crafts a web page in an attempt to exploit one or more allocation systems present in the browser. So now I will touch upon a few staple security memory allocation techniques and state-of-the-art systems. I will, however, omit others due to time constraints, and I urge you to check the paper for more details. So first, the universally acclaimed technique or design choice is to separate metadata from user-controlled chunks. This removes the vast majority of possible metadata corruption attacks due to spatial safety violations and greatly increases overall allocator security. It does, however, require introduction of a new mechanism which maps metadata to active pointers, which is usually done through a hash map. Next up, a well-established way of mitigating temporal safety violations uses randomized chunk selection when serving memory requests. This means that the allocator maintains a large pool of pre-allocated memory chunks in order to minimize the probabilities of choosing a previously freed chunk. Mitigating spatial safety violations has two notable approaches: canary values and guard pages. Canary values are essentially random values which are placed on the boundaries of a heap object or a heap block. And these are then checked upon freeing the block. If a mismatch is detected, this means that an overflow was attempted and the faulting process is killed. And it also turned out that placing random unmapped pages or guard pages throughout the heap or on block boundaries provides a rock-solid memory overflow and overread detection, as all accesses to these pages instantly trigger a page fault. So these systems have been held as unperformant and had a generally negative reputation in regard to performance. However, state-of-the-art systems have made major improvements in these fields. I will now review two most notable systems. So first off is Garder, which is a fully tunable secure allocator which provides stable randomization allocation guarantees and stable guarantees for all other security techniques implemented here. However, it also comes really close to the performance of conventional memory allocation systems. Next notable system is FFmalloc, which is a secure allocation system explicitly focused on preventing temporal safety abuses or uses FF3 mitigations, and it does so through a concept of one-time allocation, which basically means that this allocator never uses memory. This may seem bizarre at first. However, it turned out that this approach works really well, but it requires a certain degree of cooperation from the operating system kernel's paging subsystem. So we examined 6 state-of-the-art memory allocation systems and classified them based on the allocator design choices and secure memory allocation techniques they implemented. So first, we have observed that all of these secure systems share a few common traits. So first off, all of these systems physically segregate metadata from user-controlled chunks, which completely invalidates a whole scope of attacks which are aimed at corrupting internal allocator state through metadata and greatly increase the overall allocator security. Next up, we have noticed that neither of these allocators use the coalescing technique for partitioning the free space. When we combine this fact with the track record of vulnerabilities found in conventional memory allocation systems, which are due to faulty coalescing implementations or coalescing in general, we can safely conclude that this technique is not fit for safe memory allocation. And also we have noted that all of these systems use some form of binning, which can unfortunately lead to increased internal fragmentation rates. And last but not least, we have observed that neither of these systems consider memory leaks as an attack vector, which is unfortunate because this attack vector is present in real life workloads. So all of these previously described systems and techniques effectively prevent memory safety violations on the heap. However, they have long been regarded as inefficient and slow when compared to conventional memory allocation systems. So performance is king in memory allocation and is prioritized above everything else. In fact, performance is so important that programmers often resort to custom self-implemented allocation algorithms which only exacerbate existing security issues. And unfortunately, security enhancements in memory allocation systems also tend to exhibit behavior which does not follow the core computing assumptions in modern hardware, spatial and temporal data locality. So all of this motivated us to conduct a high and low level performance and evaluation of state-of-the-art systems in order to determine their viability in modern workloads. This also enabled us to explore the performance and root causes of performance slowdowns in different designs and extract a set of guidelines for future systems. So we gathered 6 state-of-the-art or open source state-of-the-art systems and plugged them into a series of benchmarks in order to compare their performance to a ubiquitous conventional memory allocation system, ptmalloc. Ptmalloc is the default memory allocation system in the GNU-C library. And testing was split into 2 major parts. A series of single metric benchmarks for on the most vulnerable and performance critical workloads, and a series of benchmarks during which we tracked a series of low-level hardware and kernel events and metrics in order to gain future insight into the root causes of performance slowdowns. So we once again analyzed the public vulnerability reports and determined that the most vulnerable and performance workloads were language interpreters, web browsers, media manipulation, and more of these. For each of these workloads, we chose an appropriate and very rigorous benchmark. For low-level performance analysis, we used 2 tests from the well-known Parsec benchmarking suite, Black Scholes and Ferret. These tests were selected because they covered a range of heap-intensive workloads in both single-threaded and multi-threaded scenarios. We then used a small library to intercept each malloc and free call and to dump into which recorded statistics of low-level hardware events. So first off, I would like to note that the majority of these systems are not production ready. And in spite of that, there were only a handful of crashes when these systems were plugged in to really complex software such as the Chromium browser. So single metric benchmarks showed that most of the reviewed systems were reasonably well when compared to ptmalloc. Some systems, namely Gardner, came as close to an impressive 96% of ptmalloc's performance on language interpreter benchmarks. However, we found that secure systems tend to exhibit higher cache pressure. This can be directly linked to some secure memory allocation techniques, and for instance, allocators with strong randomization guarantees allocated a large amount of virtual regions which polluted the translation look-aside buffer. So, moreover, randomized allocation and the over-provisioning required to maintain a steady randomization entropy led to a overuse of certain system calls, such as mmap, which was another performance hit. Some systems suffered from excessively heavyweight metadata, which we observed through overall wired memory use, physical memory use. And increased resource usage is also caused by high fragmentation rates due to inadequate size classes in the binning technique. So, to summarize, this paper presented a systematic overview of deficiencies present in conventional memory allocation systems and techniques and systems designed to increase their security. Tests on vulnerable real-life workloads have shown that most systems have a reasonably low performance overhead when compared to conventional memory allocation systems, with some secure memory allocation systems even closing the performance gap. A systematic analysis of existing secure memory allocation systems found common traits in secure allocators and revealed that no existing system offers mitigations against memory leaks. We believe that this attack vector should not be overlooked, as it can cause severe availability issues. And we also found that there is a lack of awareness in these systems in spite of their maturity, and that some programming practices such as custom allocation algorithms actively undermine their security benefits. And another important thing to note here is that there are great research possibilities in this area. First off, we mentioned the practice of custom homemade allocation algorithms, which actively undermine all security benefits provided by the secure allocation systems. A possible research opportunity would be to research how to secure these homemade allocation algorithms. And the next big thing we unearthed via our analysis is that there are no mitigations against memory leak abuses, which is also another interesting research area. And we would also like to note that recently there have been a string of papers which deal with automated vulnerability discovery for conventional secure allocation systems or conventional systems. And two major systems have been released here, Heap and Heap-hopper, and they have unearthed a large set of vulnerabilities in existing conventional memory allocation systems and in some secure allocation systems. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.